Hi everyone, I'm Bakhtawar and I talk about books here on my channel. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, my younger brother Shariar.
Hi.
Isn't he cute? So he's not a reader or anything by habit, as it were. He's more of an artist, he sketches and paints, but on my insistence, he's been, reading a bit more recently. And I think in 1.5 months, he's read something crazy like 8 or 9 books. The boy's got a talent for it. So one of the books that he read, actually, let me find it, was The Picture of Dorian Grey by Oscar Wilde, which is, one of my favorite gothic classics of all time, and just basically just my one of my favorite classics of all time. So we're going to be doing a bit of a discussion regarding the themes and regarding kind of, giving you a feel of how this wondrous, timeless classic is still very much relevant today, and a lot of the themes are still you can still find them in society and in people today, and obviously that's really the power of literature for you. So Shahryar has actually never been on camera before, so bear that in mind. I'm just going to start off with a brief summary of the book. Basically, The Picture of Dorian Gray is a story of a young man named Dorian Gray. Spoiler. Just kidding. A young man named Dorian Gray and he's a young man of exceptional beauty, and obviously he's in the prime of his youth. And a very famous artist gets enamored by his beauty and takes him as his muse and paints a portrait of him. And upon seeing the portrait and the beauty reflected in it, Dorian Gray vows to sell his soul to the devil himself, if only he can retain his youth and good looks forever. And his wish is granted. And what happens is that the painting starts to age instead of Dorian Gray himself. And also, every bad deed and act of malice that he does is recorded in the painting. So the painting becomes this sort of, well, almost this creepy video camera of the Victorian era, and it sort of records everything that he's doing, and his own moral degradation starts to show in the painting instead of on his face as it would with regular people. So one of the really most glaring themes in the book is one of outward. Wait, that was a truck. So one of the really glaring themes in the book is one of outward beauty, and the concept of how outward appearances are the only thing that's important, and beauty and youth and sort of immortality also, and but basically just being beautiful. And I would like to invite Shahryar to share his 2 cents on how that is reflected in the society today, and how people are just they're just after outward beauty, really. So Shahryar, what do you think about this?
I think people nowadays are self loving, self exalting, self obsessed. They value beauty more than anything else. For example, women want to do makeup and look good and beautiful. And for example, women nowadays use all kinds of makeup and injections to look young.
So, it's very much like Shaya said, people are obsessed with anti aging products and skincare. And, Dorian Gray is himself, of course, they didn't have the kind of science and technology back then. And Dorian Gray himself, when you read the book, you find that he's this really 2D useless sort of person, and all that he has to offer the world is a pretty face. Also, another one of the themes that I found in the book was, one of bad influence. What happens when you keep bad company? Because Dorian Gray starts off as this really naive, innocent sort of fellow, who's not really old enough to be making a lot of big decisions. And he comes under almost the tutelage of Lord Henry Wotton, who's this much older man who's sort of immoral, and who teaches him all of who proves to be a really bad influence on him and teaches him all of these things which obviously lead to his degradation. So, I would like to take again Shaya's 2 cents on what he thinks is the power of bad company, and what he thinks about it basically.
Yes, I think that in the novel, Dorian Gray was under the influence of Harry, and he was a bad influence on Dorian, and he urged him to go to parties and stay young, and told him that he was the most beautiful person and that his portrait should be made. But I think people nowadays in society, they are under the influence of bad people, for example, relatives or neighbors or friends, and their company they do vices, or they get involved in drugs.
The picture of Dorian Gray, it says a lot about sort of bourgeois mentality as well. And you see, obviously, Dorian comes into this really big inheritance from his uncle and everything, and he comes into a lot of money very suddenly. So obviously, he almost doesn't know what to do with it. And he's surrounded by all of these people who are very materialistic and who, attach a lot of importance to money. And he kind of gets, caught up with them. And it also, I think the novel was basically a critique of the way how the more privileged people in society are kind of just living in their own world, they're living in their own bubble, and they don't really care about the needs and the suffering of normal people. They're completely disconnected from that, and they're very indifferent. So Shay, what do you think about that? What have you found?
I think the rich do not take care of the poor or give them shelter, and the only thing with themselves, and just like opportunity costs, they spend money on things which are trivial and not long lasting, and they do not take care of the poor or help them or give them shelter. Instead, could have been the next best alternative, they're discontent and ungrateful, and unlike the poor unlike the poor people, they who are grateful and who get little and still are grateful. I think people should really count their blessings.
So yeah, that's all for today, folks. Short video today, sort of beginner's take on Dorian Gray. Definitely give this a read. This is highly recommended, and obviously it's an amazing novel. And so if you know anyone who's just getting into reading, anyone who's sort of a beginner, this could really be a good introduction to reading classics, and Gothic classics at any rate are very good to start from, because they have this real element of you don't know what's real, what's imaginary, this kind of crossing together of these two aspects. And a lot of people I find relate to that, or they don't relate, but they find that Gothic fiction in particular kind of elaborates on their own fears and wants, and kind of gives this supernatural twist to it. So Gothic fiction is a really good place to start if you're a beginner and you haven't read many classics before. Yeah, sound off in the comments if you've read this iconic novel and what you thought of it, and what else you would like to see on this channel. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
Bye.